Welcome to Malifaux University. 209, Blasts and Shockwaves. You've probably heard that close counts only in horseshoes and hand grenades. As fate would have it, Malifaux has its own version of both of these. Here, we call them Blast and Shockwave Markers. A blast is a type of attack effect that is represented by this symbol, usually in a model's damage variable profile. The Dawn Serpent's Breath of Fire attack is a good example of this. When the Dawn Serpent successfully attacks, it flips for damage. If it scores weak, it does just 2 points of damage. If it scores moderate, it does 3 points of damage to the target and drops 1 blast marker. If it scores severe, it does 4 points of damage to the target and drops 2 blast markers. A blast marker is always a 50mm base. You can make them thematic or use a simple, unadorned base because they are only ever on the table for a moment. In fact, you usually don't ever actually put them on the table. Most of the time, you'll hold them over the models on the table to see whom is affected, and then you'll put them away. The active word with blast markers is drop, which means that they may overlap other models, markers, and terrain. In fact, the whole point of a blast marker is to overlap other models, markers, and terrain. To drop a blast marker, you place it in base contact with the original target of the attack. The active player, the player who is causing this action to happen, gets to choose where the blast marker goes. If you drop 2, the second blast marker goes into base contact with the first blast marker, not the original target, though it may also touch the original target. The third and any additional blast markers may go in base contact with any previously dropped blast marker. Remember that while base contact usually means the bases are simply touching, it is totally within the definition of base contact for the bases to overlap or even completely align. It's up to you. When a blast marker is dropped, it does damage to any model within its 50mm diameter that is 1 damage tier lower than the damage done to the original target. Remember this encounter with Dashiell Barker's guild crew? The Dawn Serpent knows what to do now, and targets Dashiell Barker with its Breath of Fire. Cards are flipped, the attack succeeds, and he gets severe damage. That means the attack inflicts 4 points of damage on Dashiell Barker and drops 2 blast markers wherever the Dawn Serpent wants. The first one must be in base contact with Dashiell Barker, the original target. Dawn Serpent drops it so that it overlaps the base of the guard patrol. The second blast marker must be in contact with the first one, so Dawn Serpent drops it so that it overlaps Taggart Queeg. Since the original attack did severe damage, each of these blast markers does moderate damage to the guard patrol and to Taggart Queeg. They don't flip to resist, they just take it where they stand. Take note that the original target is not affected by the blast markers. Dashiell Barker takes 4 damage from the attack, not 4 plus 3. Also, if a game effect somehow increases the damage the original attack does by +1, say by flipping the red joker in the damage flip, that increase is not added to the damage from the blast markers. They do just the damage listed in the attack's variable profile. While it's easy to think of blast markers as great balls of fire, they are not automatically fiery attacks. Asura Rotten, for example, blows zombification dust with her Decay attack, which drops a blast marker no matter how low her damage is. By the way, if any model does weak damage and drops a blast marker, the damage for the blast marker is 1. Another fun example is this Drowned model. The damage at every level of its projectile vomit attack is just 1, but it could wind up dropping as many as 3 blast markers, each of which would do 1 damage to any model within it. When you eventually start playing with elevated terrain, it will be important to understand that blast markers radiate 1 inch up and down, so may affect models that are above or below them when they are dropped. The last note on blast markers is that if a model attacks a friendly model, that attack will not generate blast markers, regardless of the attack or the damage done. If blast markers are the horseshoes of Malifaux, shockwaves are the hand grenades. You don't throw them at anyone, you throw them near someone. They may look complicated at first glance, but once you know how to read them, they're as simple as anything else in Malifaux. A shockwave marker is always a 30mm base. They don't actually have a symbol, but we'll use this for these videos. Like blast markers, you can decorate them if you wish, but they're on the table for only a minute. They are removed as soon as their action is resolved. The operative word with Shockwave markers, like with blast markers, is drop. Shockwave markers may overlap other models, markers, and terrain. Let's look at the Illuminated, so he can now take his Scintillating Cloud projectile attack. Scintillating Cloud comes with a stat of 5 and has a target number of 11. As long as the Illuminated flips a 6 or better, he gets to drop a single Shockwave marker anywhere within line of sight and 8 inches. Unlike most projectile attacks, Shockwave attacks don't require a target to be within that range. You throw your grenade near your target, remember? Let's say he pulls this off. He drops a single 30mm base right in the middle of the guild models. The marker emits a 2-inch pulse in every direction, as indicated by the 2 after the word Shockwave. We measure out 2 inches from the edge of the Shockwave marker and see that it covers all 3 of the models. Any models within the Shockwave's range make a simple duel. That means it's unopposed and the other player can't screw with you. Nearly all Shockwaves will require the targets to make a movement duel, but this Scintillating Cloud uses willpower as its stat, with a target number of 13. In the order determined by the player who controls the models within range, each model flips a card and adds its willpower stat. If that total is 13 or higher, it escapes the Shockwave's effects. Any model with a total of 12 or lower will suffer 2 damage and gain a Brilliance token as described on the Illuminated's card. While a target must have line of sight to the Shockwave marker to be affected by its pulse, the marker ignores cover and concealment. A grenade doesn't care if you're hiding in the shadows, and neither does a Shockwave marker. Even though Shockwave markers generate a pulse, these markers and their pulses are limited like auras in that a model cannot be affected by more than one Shockwave marker of the same name. If a model drops more than one Shockwave marker with the same model within range of their effects, that model is affected by only one of them. Take a look at Maris LaCroix. She has a Bombs Away bonus action that drops a Shockwave marker with a 2-inch radius that requires a target 13 movement duel or else does 1 point of damage. She can discard up to 3 cards, though, to increase the number of Shockwave markers and the amount of damage they each do. Let's say she's the one in the fight with the guild crew. She discards 2 cards and gets to drop 3 Shockwave markers that will do 3 damage. Each one has a 2-inch range, but she can drop them anywhere within line of sight of herself and 5-inch range. One of them covers Dashiell Barker, the Guard Patrol, and Taggart Queeg. Another one overlaps the Guard Patrol, Taggart Queeg, and the Mounted Guard. The third one she tosses the other direction. Dashiell Barker and the Mounted Guard need to each make a target 13 movement duel, or else suffer 3 damage. Although the Guard Patrol and Taggart Queeg are within the 2-inch radius of 2 of these Shockwave markers, they are affected only once and make just 1 movement duel each. What about the third Shockwave marker? Maris LaCroix knew it couldn't affect any of these models, but really wanted them to take 3 damage instead of just 2. The wording of her action didn't say may drop, so she had to drop 3 markers to get the damage where she wanted it. Maris also had to be careful where to drop these bombs so as not to be caught by her own Shockwave markers. While pulses don't affect their sources, she's not the source of these shockwaves. The markers are. The wording of her action doesn't say only other models or only enemy models are affected, so she and her own crew could just as easily be affected by these shockwaves. That's the overview of Blasts and Shockwaves. Pick up a printable set of all the markers and tokens you need to play Malifaux in the Wargames Vault. If you haven't already, join our Patreon for early, ad-free access to all new content, and be sure to visit the Malifaux University gift shop for the latest in Malifaux-themed shirts, hoodies, drinkware, and more. Links are in the notes below. And remember, play friendly games, keep it simple, and have fun.